Sound the cannons. The Badgers got their quarterback in 2026. Let's talk about his game. Let's talk about, is this a 2-quarterback class? Let's talk about it all. We got Justin, we got Ryan on Wisconsin. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Badger fans? Whoa, you're pausing this.
You got a wild new intro. When did this happen?
Like 2 weeks ago, bro.
You never have me on.
You've been on a show with it.
I was?
Yes.
I did not catch that the first time.
You've literally been on a show with that new intro. Like, it's not new, but it's not new. Welcome to the show, Justin. We got big news, guys. Badger fans, thank you for tuning in. Locked On Badgers as always. Ryan Harris. I got Justin over there from Bucky Report and also on here all the time as well. We got news. Jarin Mock commits 2026 quarterback, Pinkerton, Ohio. We're going to talk about that, but listen, we don't get to celebrate the recruits very often. Well, we do. We talk recruit all the time, but we don't do the commitments very often, so we sound the cannons.
Fire the recruiting cannons. Another one is headed to Madison on Wisconsin.
Okay, let's talk about this commit. White Marlin is currently watching us at a townie bar. Let's go, White Marlin. I freaking love it. Love that man. All right, let's talk about this. So 6'3", about 195, 2026 quarterback. So, right, we really only have that sophomore film to go on, which makes it difficult a little bit. What were your thoughts on the sophomore film that you're able to see, though?
Well, you and I talked before we came on here. He is really polished. Like, he's worked with a really good coach in terms of technique and focus and things. He does all the little things that you want a quarterback to learn when they're in the college game already in the high school level, which is moving up in the pocket, moving up and out, to find the holes where the pass rushes move past, to find the gaps. He does a great job of keeping his eyes downfield when he moves. We talked about this. I told you, there's a couple of throws on his film that I looked at that I'm like, that is a little bit of an ego throw that's not going to work at the college level. But for the most part, he makes really good decisions. So of the last three quarterbacks, of the Phil Longo quarterbacks, he is the most polished guy we've had. Like, I look at his film and I'm like, he is ahead of the game in terms of his floor out of any of these guys. Like, he's going to be very close to being able to play from a footwork, from a, all the arm technique and just knowing how to climb the pocket and everything that they teach you that they're going to be working with the other guys on once they get to the campus.
Yeah. I think I think when people look at quarterbacks, right, they grade them out, arm strength, speed, size. He's got innate pocket awareness, right? It's really, and you hit on it, but it's really rare at his age. He steps up in the pocket, throws well on the run.
It's rare in the college game. There aren't many guys that move up like that, like he does at all.
It's a unique ability to play quarterback. And there's so many kids his age, and he has athletic tools, he has size. They just want to tuck and run because it's easy, because it's an ego thing. Look at me run, look at me make people miss. He's keeping his eyes down the field, rolling out, taking hits and delivering the ball. Like, that's a really difficult thing for a quarterback to do. The other thing I'm pointing out is there's a lot of clips when you watch his highlights. He's throwing off different platforms, pass rush, so he's kind of sidearming it. There's a lot of QB ability here. I'm actually really intrigued. This is gonna be one of those guys where that junior film, you can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I said that in the Discord when we were talking in there. I flat out said he is the guy who I want to see most in terms of the quarterbacks that we brought in, to see what type of growth we're going to get from him. Because you see a sophomore kid in high school, and I can't base anything off his physical tools. Like, that's a kid that could add 5 miles per hour to his fastball between one year to the next. Like, there's so much that ends up happening with a kid from a physical growth standpoint, just filling out and maturing, that when we look at tools at that age, it's so hard to look at it and really take anything away from it. I think there's an arm there. I don't know. Like, he has advanced touch on his throws. So one of the things that I take away from it is there's a few times I watched his film where I'm like, I would like to see what you've got in the arsenal there. I want to see that fastball every once in a while, because you're going to have to throw that in the college game a little bit more. And I think it's there, but we don't get to see it a lot in the high school film because he hasn't needed it. Like the windows are big enough where he can just touch it and put it where it needs to be so his receivers can worry about it. You don't get quite as much room for error in the college game.
Yeah, it is pretty good touch, though. There's some really nice touch passes where he's throwing 2 spots. He's not throwing at a guy. He's throwing to a spot that's going to be open. A little bit of anticipation.
Puts good air under it.
Yeah, it was the second or third clip where he throws kind of a deep vertical, but he really does a good job anticipating it. The receiver hasn't broken free of the coverage yet, and he leads him to the end zone. I like all that. But again, I just go back to the fact that it's much harder finding the awareness in a quarterback than it is finding the physical tools.
Oh, yeah.
I 100% believe that. Now, he still has tools, by the way. Like, he has physical tools, but that awareness at that age, I think there's a reason the Badgers saw this early, and they're getting in on it early.
Well, yeah, you and I have talked about this before. I don't think there's anybody that truly knows. Like, everyone wants to be a quarterback guru and say that they're amazing at doing this. You find the guy that has the best physical tools, and the mental part you hope comes together, because nobody knows. Like, most of the guys that are absolute studs in the high school game, they're playing on stacked teams, and they're sitting back there and just picking apart teams the whole time. And because of that, you can't take anything away from it because you're dominating the other team. Like, it. Not to belittle what they're doing, but you could take a mediocre quarterback and put the talent that they have around them a lot of the times, and they would still look solid. So you need to see what happens when a guy has a terrible offensive line or doesn't have elite wide receivers that are getting open, and can that guy make things happen? Because that's what's going to happen at the college game. Like at Wisconsin, we're not at that point yet where we look out there and there's 3 NFL wide receivers running around for a guy that are going to make plays. Hopefully Luke Fickell
soon.
Point, but
yeah,
go ahead.
It's a good point. I will point out Mock comes from a really good high school, Pickerington, Ohio. It's a good program. So that's always beneficial. You plucking kids from winning programs. I think that's something this staff looks for. Will Hanna, another dude, I love Will Hanna, said this is one of those early high upside recruits Bucky has to continue to land, to be competitive with the country's top programs. Let me ask you this, Justin. Any concern, like this is not a kid with a lot of offers. Any concern there? For me, not as much, but I also don't throw away the fact that there's not a lot of offers. Like I do use offers as like another data point, so I don't throw that away. But I also trust the staff when they see somebody, they evaluate somebody, and they like somebody. If they go early on them, I tend to trust the staff.
Yeah, I trust the staff. It does scare me a little bit because you never know how a kid's going to come together. And does he stall out? Does the development no longer continue to go up at the rate that you're expecting it to? Because if it doesn't, you could be left with a guy that maybe isn't quite what you thought he'd be by the time he finishes high school and is coming into your program. And that's always a risk when you take somebody early. But you can't afford to wait anymore in the college game. Most of these quarterbacks are gone like spring of their cycle year.
Yeah.
So
already gone.
26, the board will be empty effectively by the spring of 26.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of the 26 guys are already off the board for quarterback.
Yeah. Like I should say spring of 25. Most of those guys will be gone.
A lot of those guys are already off the board. So this is not like early. This is early for recruiting in a way, but it's not early for quarterbacks.
Yeah, not for quarterbacks. Yeah.
Let me get a couple comments here. P says quarterback room is going to be so much better under the new regime. It's silly. Look at the 3 quarterbacks the Longo recruit. I'm not talking transfer portal. I'm saying Locke, Mabry, and let's throw LaCrue in there too. But LaCrue is a quarterback that was already on the board. That staff came in late. It's not to dismiss it, but let's take the 3 that Longo got since he got here full time. So you have Landon Locke, right? You have Mabry Met-Toyer, and now you have Jarin Mock. Is there a trend you see with those 3, or do they all feel? And I'm putting you on the spot there. Or do they all feel like kind of distinct quarterbacks to you?
Mabry feels very different than Landon and Mock to me. Landon and Mock feel a lot more like the polished throwers or passers that you're looking for. Mabry feels like you're going for Captain America. You want all the physical tools in the world. So they are a little different. I feel like they're more high floor. Like I said about this, I love Mabry. I love his tools. I wouldn't be shocked if either of these 2 guys end up having more arm talent, but less actual physical tools. Like Mabry's got the biggest arm. It's not close between any of these guys. He's got an absolute cannon. We've seen him throw it 60 plus in a game before. I don't know if these guys can throw it 60 plus, pads off throwing it. But that isn't a requirement for the college game to be really good. Mertz didn't either. I watched him at Elite 11. He hit 59 or something like that. I think the highest guy got like 63.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things where I look at it and I think they do have kind of a type. I would like to see them sprinkle in a few more Mabry types in there because I want the balance between that guy who has a potential to be a physical freak that can go out there and do things, a little Josh Allen, and then a little bit of the other guy where it's like this guy, the odds of him busting are very low.
Yeah, I do like some of that mix in there. I agree with you. Mabry's the high upside guys. Feels like Landon and Mock are maybe the guys with a higher, I don't want to say higher floor. That's almost discern. I think Mabry has a high floor too, but
he does too. They're more polished than him.
They're a little more polished is probably a good way to say it. I would say this too. The progression of quarterbacks is fascinating to watch, right? You look back at Mabry Mentor is a great example. His junior film to his senior film, he went from a little more inconsistency in decision-making to one interception in his senior film. Like there was a really nice jump there.
And that was like the last game.
That was the last game. And it was, yeah. I'm very curious to see the progression with Jarin Mock because he's going to get bigger. He has to get bigger, right? He's kind of skinny. He needs to add weight. To Justin's point, I thought it was a really good one that he made. He could add 5 miles of fastball to his game as he gets bigger and stronger. And then you couple that with the quarterback awareness that for his age is pretty advanced, just in terms of moving his feet, keeping his head downfield. Mm-hmm. That's a really enticing package because he's 6'2", 6'3". I think he's listed at 6'3".
He's got mobility too.
I think he's more like 6'2", but yeah, and he's got some mobility.
Yeah, he moves well. Like we got asked about him as a runner, and you and I both kind of agreed. He's a little like Van Dyke. Like he's a guy who can move, but he's not a guy that you're expecting to be like, my first read isn't there, I'm taking off. He's not Mordecai. And I think if we're talking about it, I would rather have number 2 than number 1. I want a quarterback that's going to assess the field because I don't want him taking chances with his body because it takes one hit to lose your quarterback for the season. I want him to be able to take off and run if there's nothing there, if he goes through his progression, but I don't want him kind of getting happy feet early on.
Yeah, I agree. Mr. October said if he can start helping to recruit 26 dudes in Ohio, that would work. Yeah, I'll say this, like just in general, getting that quarterback on board early to help recruit is a big deal.
It is a big deal. Especially, I don't know if he's going to go. So one of the things that's big to me, if you want to see him jump from a rating standpoint, and I don't really care one way or the other, he could be really good either way. But if he's going to hit the camp circuit, that will help him. It always helps with ratings. I kind of hate it because to me, those camps are effectively useless. Nothing that they do at him is going to necessarily translate to the college level other than like they're probably doing some of the skill work that they work on with their training and like reading coverage and stuff like that. But it doesn't matter if you don't have a defensive line in front of you. Like, everything changes with your processing the second somebody's in your face.
Yeah, they do a lot of skelly work. Like you can get a gauge of the physical tools, but the mental side of playing quarterback, you can't really gauge in that situation.
Which is what we talked about. Like if you're going to rate them just on physical tools, then it's fine. I don't care. Just don't act like this person's so advanced. And it's like, based on what? Like we're not going to know until they step foot on a college football field and start doing things.
Mehmet says, I love what Longo can do with quarterbacks. Bird Dogger says, has Ohio State offered him? And then Billy Tuesday came in and said, no. Ohio State fan tuning into the show. Yeah.
Ohio State doesn't normally do their own state unless it's somebody's like a 5-star.
Yeah. Ohio State sets its bar pretty high. And that's no knock on anybody that Wisconsin's after or gets. Do you think this is a 2-quarterback class?
I think it's going to be a very interesting thing with what happens with Mabry this fall and where that leads into the spring. I know nothing about the situation, but if somehow Mabry ends up bursting onto the scene next year and ends up taking a major leap between now and the end of spring and heading into fall camp, he's got a chance to take the job. Things get really awkward between the coaching staff and Landon and Braden, where it's like Braden's probably never, he's never going to be a starter at that point if Mabry takes it over unless there's an injury, which kind of changes the dynamic there and makes things a little awkward. Because every kid wants a chance. And now if you feel like it's the same thing for Landon, because if Mabry hits, you're talking about a guy who's a redshirt freshman who's going to have at least 2 years, probably 3, because he probably won't leave until after his junior year. Quarterbacks rarely go that early, unless they're absolute freak shows. So he suddenly loses, 2 to 3 years of playing time and is banking on being a junior or senior. Whoever comes in behind him, like could be Mock, comes in behind him.
Yeah.
You have to make business decisions, and that goes both ways. So I personally, I love the fact that I like Landon and Braden, but I think you have to protect yourself in case something goes sideways there. And I know nothing about the family or what their thoughts are on this. If they want to compete or whatever, that's amazing if they do. I don't want us to be caught with our pants down because something happens that we're not necessarily expecting, and it leads to a domino effect. That room gets real thin real quick.
Yeah, I would say this too, man. And Will Hanna here said I expect him to come in at about 215. Yeah, he's gonna be bigger. I'll say this until you framed it really well, and I'm just gonna dive into that frame. It's a business decision on both sides. Until you have the quarterback, until you are sure that you have the quarterback for the next several years, you keep throwing bodies at the spot. It's too important. I'm sorry. Like, one thing Bill Walsh always did with the Niners, even though he had Montana, and Young later on, not always, but he typically tried to draft a later round quarterback because it's just the most important spot on the field. Throw bodies at it until you know for sure.
That's how you get Jim Drunkenmiller.
Oh gosh, Virginia Tech, first round pick, number 26 overall. He pulled like a train up a hill for training. Turns out that has nothing to do with throwing quarterbacks or throwing footballs. Sorry,
on the wing tee.
Salty 49ers fan here. I apologize for my Jim Drunkenmiller outburst. Justin just triggered me. This is not a safe space, apparently. But yeah, like, listen, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not trying to bruise any egos, and I don't know if they said.
I don't think we are. I think we're just being realist about the status of college football right now. Mm-hmm. This is what happens, and these kids need to protect themselves too. Like, if you're a quarterback, I look at it every time, and I just think, if you're a quarterback that wants opportunity, there is no shame in transferring. If somebody is going to be the incumbent quarterback ahead of you, you only get 4 years or 5 years. You got to do what's best for you. So I never look at it as a negative if that kid decides, I don't want to waste 2 years not being able to see the field because this guy's a stud. Mm-hmm. Like that sucks for that kid. And it's great to have loyalty. If they choose to do that, that is amazing. It's a quality that is in very short supply right now in college football. But you also have to balance that with the fact that you may miss out on some opportunities that you'd have at other places.
Yeah, that's well said. I agree. Any last thoughts here on Jarin Mock, quarterback recruiting, Phil Longo, anything else?
Yeah, I would just say anyone that's looking at this, don't take too much away from it until we can see a little bit more on him. Like, he is a small ball clay right now that is being developed. Like, sophomore film, we rarely look at that when we're recruiting quarterbacks. It's normally junior year we start looking at, and then senior year is when you're like, wow, this guy really came together. So his film is really good for a sophomore, but from a physical tools and ability to scan and read the field, he's going to get so much more advanced over the next couple of years that you can't really look at it and really get an idea of what he's going to be by his senior year.
Yep. I think you take this as a data point, you look at it, and you can start to get a feel for the type of player he is and the type of tools he has, but there's a lot of growth here. And listen, growth isn't always linear. Like, sometimes players don't always grow, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a big risk is always. I would say this. I had him on the show. We talked to him a while ago. He said his coach gets on him for not running more, which, again, I think those skills are there, but he's really focused on finding his playmakers and getting his dudes the ball. The other thing I would say is, I know there were other quarterbacks this staff is still kind of in on and is looking at. They like him. This staff really likes him.
Well, you don't take him this early if you don't.
Exactly. I know there's some questions about, did we settle? Just because of the offer list, I think. They're not settling this early on a guy.
Phil Longo can get dudes. Like, if he wanted to just get a 4-star quarterback, he could go out and get a 4-star quarterback just for the prestige of getting the 4-star. He wants his guy that he looks for, certain tools and things that he looks for. I don't know what that list is, but I don't think that he's ever going out there and gives and cares at all what their rating is. He's going out there looking for specific things that he identifies as things that will allow a player to be successful. So this kid could be a 3-star. There could have been a 4-star that was on campus that they're like, I like him better. He looks better when I watch him throw the ball. Ball comes off easier. It sounds like he had a really good camp at Wisconsin. So that helps too. So that's a big deal. When a coach is there, has his eyes on you and sees you play well and throw the ball well, that's meaningful.
Yeah. And listen, Phil Longo might be wrong, right? All we're telling you is they believe in him. Like that, they may have a wrong eval, but they believe in him. This is not a settle in their eyes. And Alien Space set it up here. He said, I expect him to get more offers. Yeah. Like how many players have we seen Wisconsin get in early on and Ohio State swoops in with a late offer or someone else swoops in with offers and tries to flip them?
We saw it happen with Mabry. We saw it happen with Landon. They both got Miami offers. They got a bunch of other ones that came in after the fact. This will be him committing to Wisconsin is going to be teams will now take notice and be like, who did Wisconsin just get?
That's a great point.
And they're going to review his film and take a look at it. And they're going to review his film again when junior film comes out and take a look at it and say, how much growth was there? Did they hit on somebody here? And you might see some big teams come in.
And you know why that is? It's not because of Wisconsin. It's because of Phil Longo. Because Phil Longo's track record at finding and evaluating quarterbacks, when he brings in somebody who doesn't have a lot of national offers, they're going to be like, Longo likes that guy. We should probably take another look. All right, Justin. He is Justin Julk over the Bucky Report. I'm Ryan Herring's obviously Locked On Badgers. As always, thank you for tuning in. Jarin Mock's a Badger, at least a verbal commit to be a Badger. Let's be very clear here on Wisconsin, and we will talk tomorrow.